Final 1 minute.
Say that again.
All right, great. I have the thumbs up. So good morning again and good afternoon. Good morning to those in the room here in Washington, D.C. We also do have online audience. I have the privilege of seeing them here. And thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Mine is very simple, is to call us to order and then to hand over to our director, Dr. Zainab Usman, who is joining us from Korea. So she's going to welcome us and get us started on this program. Thank you very much. Dr. Zainab?
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Jane. Good morning, good afternoon, good day to everyone joining us in person and also virtually from around the world. Well, as Jane mentioned, I'm currently joining from Seoul, South Korea. Sorry I couldn't be there in person. I think I am familiar with a lot of people in the room, but just by way of introduction, I'm Zainab Usman, Director of the Africa Program at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. I'm very excited to welcome you all here today in person in DC and also online from around the world for the global launch of the Africa Technology Policy Tracker, or AfTech, as we are calling it. A key objective of our work at the Carnegie Africa Program is to engage policymakers and scholars to help inform global discourse and policy on Africa. As you know, we facilitate policy dialogues between African stakeholders and their counterparts in the US and around the world to advance ideas that will meaningfully promote beneficial partnerships, prosperity, and equal opportunity. Today, we are exceptionally glad to be holding this event in partnership with the African Telecommunications Union to promote knowledge and dialogue on Africa's digital economy. Over the past few years, as many of you are probably aware, many African governments and organizations have been expanding the use of digital technologies to do a variety of things, to increase productivity, to increase efficiencies, to enhance processes, but very importantly, to achieve better development outcomes on the continent. There are regional frameworks like the African Union's Digital Transformation Strategy for Africa, which seeks to create integrated and inclusive digital societies and economies on the continent. There are as well dozens of national level initiatives. 2 years ago, the Carnegie Africa Program began work on the Africa Technology Policy Tracker. In October 2023, we previewed the AfTech prototype of 8 pilot countries at the GSMA Mobile World Congress in Kigali, Rwanda. Today, thanks to the tireless efforts of Carnegie staff, led by Dr. Jane Munga, our partners at the African Telecommunications Union, and country focal points, some of whom are joining us here today online, we are proud to announce that we have aggregated more than 550 digital economy laws, policies, and regulations for 35 countries in Africa, as well as continent-wide frameworks from the African Union and other Pan-African organizations. As a result, AfTech is the first continent-wide repository of digital economy laws, policies, and regulations in Africa. This research, we hope, will provide valuable insights into how countries are enabling digital transformation and designing the associated policies and regulations. This tool, we hope, will help policymakers across the continent, as well as entrepreneurs and private sector leaders and development partners to better inform their engagement in the African digital space. We are very much mindful of the fact that really the only thing constant in life is change. While we have data from a critical mass of African countries, about 35, captured in our database, we will continue to update this repository to ensure that it is as comprehensive as possible. Therefore, following remarks today from esteemed partners and government officials, Carnegie Africa Fellow Jane Munga will unveil AfTech and provide a brief demonstration of its capabilities. We will then welcome onto the stage speakers for a discussion on the status of digital governance on the continent and the role that AfTech could play. With that said, I am honored to introduce the African Telecommunications Secretary General, Mr. John Omo, for his keynote remarks. Mr. Omo, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Zainab. I confirm you read me. You read me?
Yes, I can hear you. Hopefully they can too in the...
Thank you very much. I'm certainly very delighted to join you for the launch of the African Technology Policy Tracker, an initiative that results from the collaboration between the Carnegie Africa program and the African Telecommunications Union, which I lead. This particular project embodies our shared commitment to enhancing digital capabilities of our continent. And with its launch, I'm eager to see that Africa utilizes the tracker's features to craft effective regulatory frameworks and policy initiatives that enable us to realize the digital advancements that we hope to have. The conception of this tracker arose from a mutual recognition and appreciation of the need for accessible and comprehensive data and technology policies across the continent. And the ATU committed to promoting the rapid development of ICTs to achieve universal access and connectivity, recognize the potential impact of such a resource. And so when, after due discussions with the Carnegie Africa program, the alignment with our objectives was very clear, and we seized the opportunity to collaborate with the program in this regard. Deep appreciation, of course, goes to the 36th now member states of the ATU who have contributed data to this project. Their efforts have been invaluable in creating a platform that accurately reflects the regulatory environment across the continent. That undertaking proves that more can be achieved when openness and mutual support are prioritized. And for those member states that are yet to contribute, we encourage participation in this collective effort, as the tracker's effectiveness will depend on the completeness, accuracy, and constant update of the data. Now, at this phase of Africa's digital disruption, it is important to reflect on some of our realities. The International Telecoms Union will indicate that approximately 43% of Africans now use the internet, showing immense progress, but still way, way below the global population. A lot of our areas, especially in the rural areas, do record usages of nearly just about 20%. So just that talks about the digital divide between the urban and rural environments in which we live. And while mobile phone subscriptions have increased to over 85% of the population in the same period, the transition to broadband and high-speed internet remains substantially a challenge. Despite those hurdles, promising developments are underway. The African Union's digital transformation strategy that Madam Zainab has alluded to aims to ensure universal access to the internet by 2030. That's just a few years from now. And so investments in high-speed cables and undersea cables and high-speed mobile data is required for us to ensure that there's universal access to the internet. The policy tracker, for me, opens a very meaningful conversation about improving technological policies, regulations, and operations across the continent, because it brings together the laws, the policies, the regulations, various countries, thus enabling us to learn from each other's experiences and to see what we can meaningfully improve on. In effect, the tool is available for civil society organizations and researchers, business people hoping to gain insights into Africa's ICT environment, and governments that seek to harmonize their policy and regulatory practices across the continent. We still have a number of challenges, as I've mentioned, including affordability, digital literacy, gender disparities in technological access. And so the tracker will provide data and insights that are necessary to identify and bridge these gaps, ensuring that technological advancements benefit all segments of our society. And therefore, I urge us to commit to utilizing this valuable resource to its fullest extent and ensure that the benefits of digital technologies reach every African. Let's learn, let the system break down because it's being used or overused for that matter. Because that way we know that it is in need, and we will fix any breakdowns that come as a result of overuse. Thank you very much for listening to me. I look forward to our continued collaboration with the Carnegie. We do think that we can build a lot of other features onto this platform, including issues like broadband penetration, gender disparities across the continent, heat maps in terms of various access opportunities, gaps that are available in the continent. So the tracker is a first opportunity that we have, and on it we hope to build a lot more other features going forward. Thank you very much for listening to me. Over to you, Program Director.
Okay, thank you very much. And let me first say again, good morning to everyone. Thank you to Dr. Zainab Usman, who has welcomed us here and given her remarks, and also to the Secretary General for the Africa Telecommunications, who is also zooming in from Nairobi. And Secretary General and those who are online, I also want to let you know we have a room of a crowd here at the Washington, D.C. who are also here to attest to the launch. And we're also going to now go to the next session where I discuss how we got here. I think the Secretary General has also talked about this, and also Dr. Zainab, that it's been 2 years of this research. So it's taken us quite a while, but it's an exciting journey. So my name is Jane Munga. I don't know if I introduced myself. And I'm a fellow here at the Carnegie Endowment. So when I came on board, we decided to do research on how do we surface digital technologies or what's happening within the continent, especially from a legal environment. And the idea was to come up with a regulatory tracker or a one-stop shop repository. So the research is in recognition that there's a lot happening within the continent. But if you're a researcher or if you're trying to do business within the African continent, where do you go? Where do you start searching for what's exactly within the continent? And so we decided, why don't we develop this and let some do research, what's there, what's not there, what are the gaps? The first thing that we undertook was to develop an analytical framework. I'm saying this as my framing remarks to the demonstration of the video you're just about to see of the tracker. So our analytical framework is based on the 4 key areas of the digital economy. We decided to look at digital infrastructure. We're also looking at digital platforms. And thirdly, we are looking at digital skills. And lastly, at innovation. So once we had the analytical framework, now it was time to collect data. And again, we were asking ourselves, how do you get this data? So we started with the desktop research, go online, try and get as much of this as you can. And then it came to the reality that we needed to extend our networks further. One of the things that I don't know how many of you have tried to look for these documents online, they're not always readily available. So came in our partner, the Africa Telecommunications Union. They worked with us to assign government representatives, the very people who are developing these documents. And so we've had focal points from about 35 countries so far. We're hoping to extend this to 55 countries. And the other ones who've been working with us, we developed surveys, we developed a research tool whereby they could deposit for us these documents. And then we have our research team in the back. I see Kofi, and we've had Ebele, who now took the time to go through these documents and to development into the tracker that we're about to launch. So the tracker itself is geared for 4 things. It's a resource in itself. So now you have a place where you can go to. It also enhances the visibility. And thirdly, it's also going to help us in supporting knowledge and peer learning across policymakers and also stakeholders. Sorry, I'm trying to get to my notes here. Then another thing that you will find in the tracker itself is that we have about 550 data points. We have 35 countries and the Africa Union. The Africa Union has about 10 digital documents that we now have put on the repository. And they're all in either is it a policy or a law or a regulation. Lastly, we also have what we call key data points. If you're interested in a certain area like artificial intelligence or cybersecurity, we have a key code where you can type that in, and the tracker itself will give you all these digital policies. We do have some insights that have come forth, but I also want to preempt this that we have launched one paper. There's a companion piece that will also be available online, and we'll also be doing a larger paper which is called the framing piece. But some of the key things that we noticed and what's happening in the African continent, I think is important to note is a lot of digital economy policies, laws, and regulations tend to focus around digital infrastructure. So there's a lot happening with that space. Of late, we're beginning to see more on cloud, cybersecurity, and now on artificial intelligence. But for the most part, we've seen a lot of work when it comes to digital infrastructure. Second thing, we're beginning to note that a lot of countries are focusing on what we call socioeconomic development. They want to see how to develop their digital economies, and also inclusivity. So two key things that I just wanted to quickly highlight. But I'm not here to really talk about this because we do have a panel that is going to delve into this. And so I want us now to look at the tracker itself, which is I've been here. There's also a QR code. I hope it's going to be put up after this. But for now, let's go straight into the video that gives you a sense of what you'll find in the tracker. Zach.
Hello, and welcome to the Africa Technology Policy Tracker, also known as AfTech. In this video, I'm going to show you how to use AfTech and explore its features. When you first arrive on the website, the first thing you will see is the introductory page. This page gives you an overview of the tracker, its digital economy framework, and some information about our collaborator, the Africa Telecommunications Union, or ATU. On the same page, you will find the About the Tracker tab. When you click on it, you will see a summary of AfTech's research methodology and a sneak peek into what's coming next in this project. Now, as you scroll down, you will see our digital economy pillars. Each tab explains a specific pillar and its sub-pillars when you click on it. Right below that, you will find the Country Selection tab, an interactive map of Africa, and a table. The table summarizes the number of digital economy documents that we have for each country, and even the African Union. By default, the country selection is set to all countries. This means you will see all the digital economy documents we have, grouped by pillar, sub-pillars, and key data points. Now, the key data points are essentially keywords you can use to find specific types of documents on AfTech. Let me show you an example. If I want to find all digital economy documents from Rwanda, here's what I would do. I would go to the Country Selection tab, click on Rwanda, and voila, all documents related to Rwanda's digital economy will appear. Or I can simply click on Rwanda directly on the interactive map. This will give me the same results. From here, I can click on any document and it will take me directly to the original source on Rwanda's official government website. Now, let's say I want to search for artificial intelligence document from Rwanda only. All I need to do is to go to the Search Key Data Point tab and type artificial intelligence. AfTech will then show me only AI-related documents from Rwanda. It is that simple. At the bottom of the page, you will find an option to download the entire data set that powers AfTech. This lets you explore the data offline or use it in your own research or projects. That's it. More features are on their way for AfTech, so stay tuned for updates. Thank you for using AfTech and happy exploring.
All right, so we can say it's officially launched. Thank you. If we can have the QR code, I just want to give members of the audience the opportunity to see if you can interact with that. There you go. If you can take a picture, see if that QR code is live. As we transition also to the next section. Thank you, Kofi. The voice you heard is in the back. Thank you, Kofi, for that interaction. We're really excited about this tool, and we really hope that you can interact with it. So the next section, before we go to the panelists, we do have a policymaker, the Cabinet Secretary, Dr. Margaret Nyambura Ndongo, who is joining us online from Kenya. She has taken the time to join us to talk a little bit about the Kenyan ecosystem. I think it's important to also hear what's actually happening on the ground. And then we'll get your remarks, Dr. Margaret, and then we'll transition to the panelists. Dr. Margaret, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Munga. Distinguished delegates, all protocols observed. It's an honor to join you today at the launch of the Africa Technology Policy Tracker, a landmark initiative that exemplifies the transformative potential of collaboration in Africa's digital journey. I wish to extend my deepest appreciation to the Carnegie Africa program and the African Telecommunications Union for their visionary leadership in developing this essential resource. Africa is at the cusp of a digital revolution. Across our continent, digital technologies are reshaping our societies, opening up opportunities for innovation, entrepreneurship, and inclusive economic growth. Mobile connectivity, expanding broadband infrastructure, and digital platforms have become the lifeblood of economic activities, enhancing access to education, healthcare, and financial services for millions of Africans. Yet, as we celebrate this progress, we must also recognize the challenges: fragmented policies, inconsistent regulations, and the lack of a unified framework to address emerging technologies limit ability to fully harness the benefits of digital transformation. The Africa Technology Policy Tracker arrives at a pivotal moment, offering a dynamic platform to bridge these gaps and chart a collective pathway forward. Distinguished delegates, this project is vital for many reasons, which include visibility on how we as Kenya are shaping our digital economy. Before I speak about how AfTech can support us in the region, I want to talk about what we are doing as a country. As this research shows, Kenya has multiple documents providing direction and guiding its vision for digital economy. Among these documents is a digital economy blueprint that we developed in 2019. We have the National ICT Policy that we are now working on or reviewing. We have the Kenya Information Communication Act that we are amended, and it has been amended many times. And we have the 2018 Computer Misuse and Computer Act, which again we are working on to update it with the emerging technologies. And we have the 2019 Data Protection Act. We are now looking at developing a national data policy with the potential to have data act that better aligns with the changing landscape of the digital economy. Additionally, we are in the process of developing a national artificial intelligence policy and strategy. Allow me to spend a few minutes outlining our approach to the digital economy. Kenya's digital economy blueprint builds on the priorities outlined by the Kenya Vision 2030. The digital economy blueprint outlines the significant work already happening across government, the private sector, civil society, businesses, academia, and also defines the priority areas in the following pillars. We have infrastructure, we have digital government, we have digital business, innovation and entrepreneurship, and digital skills and values. On the first pillar of infrastructure, achieving affordable, accessible, and reliable digital infrastructure for businesses and households is a foundational requirement for unlocking the potential of the digital economy. Through multiple investments by both the private and public sector, Kenya now boasts to have 87% active mobile broadband subscription. Despite this impressive figure, we know that only 40% of Kenyans actively use the internet, meaning that we shall need to put more effort in skills development, local content, and internet affordability. The government has invested in development of national fiber optic backbone infrastructure across all our 47 counties. The project has enhanced service delivery, especially at the county level, as all country headquarters are connected to the national infrastructure. A critical service at the localized level are now digitally empowered. These include health services, the local dispensaries being able to access health information systems, the judiciary services where lawyers attend courts remotely. We have agricultural services where farmers access agriculture-based information systems through mobile phones, general election system being able to transmit data from the lowest unit, the polling station, among others. The second pillar, which focuses on digital government in Kenya, is intended to promote greater ease of doing business and more responsive and efficient services to our citizens. The Kenya government has over 22,000 digitized services offered through our eCitizen platform. eCitizen offers one-stop access to essential services such as applying for passport and registering business cards or DES, among others. It has a very comprehensive system. The third pillar of this framework is supporting growth of digital businesses. In Kenya, the growth of e-commerce has been underpinned by success in mobile money payment platforms such as M-Pesa. More recently, in 2023, we launched our national e-commerce strategy, which aims to position Kenya as a digital leader in Africa by promoting inclusive and secure e-commerce services. Some of the notable e-commerce services include, but are not limited to, M-Kopa, which is a fintech company providing asset financing for products like smartphones and solar systems, expanding financial inclusion for the lower income groups. By 2024, M-Kopa had reached over 5 million customers across Africa. We also have Litro, initially started as a Kenyan online ride-hailing application. It is now a prominent everyday everything app, offering a range of services, including delivery and payment solutions. Operating in cities across Kenya and the region, Litro connects customers with drivers and delivery agents to provide convenient and affordable services. Distinguished delegates, the fourth pillar is development of digital skills and inculcation of ethics and values. To take innovation to the next level and position Kenya as a technology hub to both local and multinational companies, we are building the technological capabilities of our people. In Kenya, we firmly understand that our youth are our nation's greatest resource. Young people have the potential to expand and advance Kenya's labor force, turning Kenya and Africa as a whole into a frontier growth of innovation. Towards this end, we have already invested in skilling our young generation with the 21st century skills. These include digital literacy in primary schools, development of curriculum, and creating centers of excellence in all levels of education systems. Innovation-driven and entrepreneurship is the fifth and final pillar of our strategy. Kenya boasts a robust innovation ecosystem, earning in the name Silicon Savannah. There are numerous tech hubs in the country, including some that are well known in the region, such as NIHub, and we have also iHub. The government is working with innovation hubs to lower entry barriers for ICT entrepreneurs and help scale their businesses in the country and beyond. Kenya believes in progressive regulations that promote rather than stifle innovation. To this end, we have set up regulatory sandbox at the Communication Authority, our regulator, where the regulator and the innovators came together to jointly understand the risks and opportunities presented by emerging technologies. We intend to have similar regulatory sandboxes for the data protection regulator to better regulate the data sector. To strengthen our digital technology footprint, we have established several strategic partnerships, notably the Kenya Digital Economy Acceleration Project. In 2023, the Kenyan government received $390 million USD grant from the World Bank, launched KDIP to enhance digital infrastructure and improve service delivery and build digital skills. We also have manufacturer of affordable smart devices. We have partnered with local mobile operators to locally assemble affordable smart devices with a price range of up to $40 USD. This will not only promote uptake of digital services, but citizens must also spur local manufacturing. I want now to turn my remarks to today's topic, Africa's technological policy landscape, opportunities and gaps. The opportunities in Africa's digital economy are vast, from democratization of information to new avenues of economic empowerment. However, gaps persist, particularly in areas such as digital inclusion, cybersecurity, and the ethical use of artificial intelligence. Many African nations face challenges in aligning national priorities with the fast-paced evolution of technology. While some countries lead in crafting forward-looking policies, others grapple with outdated frameworks that hinders growth and innovation. A critical gap also exists in the implementation of policies. Strong legislation often lacks the corresponding institutional capacity for enforcement. Addressing these gaps requires deliberate investments in digital infrastructure, capacity building for policymakers and regulators, and fostering a culture of innovation where entrepreneurship can thrive. Additionally, there is a growing need for harmonizing tech policies for a single digital economy. The vision of continental single digital economy is one of shared prosperity and resilience. Realizing this vision demands coordinated action among African governments, regional economic communities, and continental bodies such as the African Union. Distinguished delegates, harmonization of technology policies is critical to reducing barriers to cross-border digital trade, ensuring interoperability in digital payment systems, and creating a seamless digital marketplace. Initiatives like the African Continental Free Trade Area must include robust digital economy protocols that promote data sharing and connectivity across borders while respecting sovereignty and safeguarding privacy. The AfTech platform is a significant step toward this goal, offering a centralized repository that can inform policymakers and enable peer learning across nations. By aligning policies and fostering trust among stakeholders, can build a digital ecosystem that reflects our shared aspirations as a continent. Lastly, I want to emphasize on collaboration. Building a resilient and inclusive digital economy is a shared responsibility. Government must create enabling environments through progressive regulations, but we cannot act alone. Private sector stakeholders have a critical role in investing in scalable, secure technologies while adhering to ethical standards that prioritize public interest. Kenya has deliberately created collaborative frameworks and mechanisms, e.g. KEPSA TESPOC for the private sector. We have KICTANET in the civil society. We have ISACA, which is an ICT professional body, where governments continuously engages to better form and enrich public policy. Academia and research institutions can provide evidence-based insights to guide policy decisions, while civil society organizations ensure inclusivity and protect the rights of vulnerable groups. International partners and donors have a critical role, not only in funding projects, but supporting African-led initiatives that reflect the unique context and ambitions of our continent. Collaborative frameworks like AfTech are most effective when they amplify African voices and expertise. Distinguished delegates, the African Technology Policy Tracker is more than a tool. It is a call for action. A call for African nations to embrace collaboration over competition, to build frameworks that empower rather than restrict, and to harness the boundless opportunities of the digital age responsibly and inclusively. As we launch this remarkable platform today, let us commit to leveraging to create policies that are not only innovative and adaptive, but also rooted in equity and shared progress. Together, we can ensure that Africa's digital transformation is a beacon of global inspiration and a cornerstone of our collective prosperity. Thank you very much, and over to you, moderator.
Yes. Thank you very much, Madam CS, Dr. Margaret Ndongo. We are really happy and privileged to have you. I know you have a very busy schedule, and you had already asked that if you kindly leave, you'd have to depart because you have a flight to catch. So we really thank you. So at your leisure, please thank you. And I like the word. AfTech is a call to action. I think we are going to adopt that. It's definitely not just a call for research, but it's also a call to action for development of new trackers. So I think I'm going to close this first session. I'm sorry.
Do you read me?
Yes, Secretary General.
If the CS has to leave the room, let me just.
Okay, you have 1 minute, please. Thank you.
1 minute. Sorry, Madam CS. She did not mention that she's also hosting the African Telecommunications Union in Kenya. I'm very sorry, Madam, that I didn't recognize your presence here earlier, for which I sincerely apologize. Thank you very much for gracing this occasion. Over to you, Jen.
Thank you, Secretary General. Thank you very much again for your comments, Dr. Margaret. So I want to hand over to our moderator, Dr. Obra Anthony, for the next session. Thank you.
Yes.
Universal ones? Okay, great. Thank you so much, Jane. And I have to begin first just by saying bravo. This has really been a labor of love. And as you mentioned, 2 years of really significant work by our Carnegie colleagues and colleagues at ATU. I think one of the values that this work brings is it lets us step back and look at the tech policy landscape as a whole in Africa. And that allows us to ask more productive questions and have more grounded, informed answers to those questions. And that's what we are looking forward to diving into today with our esteemed panel. So let me welcome to the stage. Please help me invite our panelists up to the stage. We'll begin with Angelo Amola, the head of Sub-Saharan Africa at the GSMA. Please welcome.
Thank you.
And Her Excellency Mathilde Mukantavana, the Ambassador to the United States of America from the Republic of Rwanda. And Ambassador, and Rob Floyd, the Director of Innovation and Digital Policy at the African Center for Economic Transformation. And last but not least, Dr. Jane Munga, a fellow from the Africa program here at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. So welcome, everyone. We're going to dive right in. I think the way that I want us to begin, one of the values of this type of data aggregation exercises that the tracker offers, as has been mentioned, this is a really vital resource. This is a tremendous effort to try and allow us to have a conversation about the African landscape and not indexing that to other regions, to the tech policy landscape throughout the world, but really centering this conversation in the African context and the experiences of those of you who have traveled the journey of constructing policy, regulations, and legislation. A tracker like this lets us step back and consider both the many diverse and disparate efforts that are ongoing throughout the continent. Each nation is going to be tackling these opportunities in their own way. But it also allows us to consider how these independent efforts fit together as a more cohesive whole and step back and look at kind of the patchwork analysis. So I wanted to begin our discussion with this framing of how the policy landscape across Africa looks as a whole, and really build off of some of the esteemed Cabinet Secretary's remarks around where are the key opportunities and where are the key gaps, and where do you see different opportunities arising, but also what steps need to be taken to address some of the gaps that do arise that we have visibility into. So I want that to also be an opportunity for you to share a brief introduction of who you are, where you come from, what your organization or your government is most proud of, what you do. So please, maybe we can start with you, Ambassador. Rwanda has taken such a proactive role in pushing digital tech policy, in adopting pro-innovation policy, also responsible innovation. So I want to invite you to share a little bit about the work that you all have done and where you've seen the lessons that you've learned through that process, where there are opportunities that have arisen that you think others can learn from, and where you feel that the work that you have done can help inform gaps that can also be addressed, and how. So over to you, Ambassador.
Thank you so much, and really very thankful to Carnegie for convening us here and the Africa Telecommunications Union. I have to start by saying that really when we were talking about technology, it was to put the technology in the forefront was intentional, but also it was because of need. For us as a country that was a developing nation coming out of almost nothing, with no industrialization. When we were setting a high vision, or Vision 2020, then Vision 2050, we put the technology, we wanted to leapfrog in progress in many different ways, because We are talking about a country that was not highly developed or industrialized. So technology was the way to the future. And we readied the infrastructure to create an amenable environment for us to be able to develop our country. So there are a number of things that Rwanda has done. Like, for instance, initiative like the Kigali Innovation City, that was created solely to develop technology and to partner with, private entities, but also institutions such as Carnegie Mellon, to establish a whole campus with the ecosystem of development of technology. And the choices we've made, sometimes based on need, technology became the center of what we could do, including in health. We were among the first countries to use the drone in the delivery of medicine. We digitalized all our documents. Like now, what we call Irembo, that are used by the government entity is fully digitalized. So anything about land attribution, passports, all these are on digital format. So anyone can access whatever we can do in Rwanda based on this. So we built infrastructure, especially, and we are developing new ones like 5G, offering incentive for startups. And for that, we need to find available and viable partnerships like Norsken from Sweden that has created the whole ecosystem of startups, of innovation. And especially when you think about the younger generation, the younger population, all of us in Africa, not just Rwanda, but all the people, especially our young generation, have appetite for technology because it's the way to the future. So we are developing this. So, and we are participating in initiatives like this one. And I'm so glad to be sitting with experts in the field because when they were talking, it was exactly some of the talking points I was going to put out there. But the keynote speeches have addressed it and better than I could ever do it. So I'm not going to go there. But we have a strong collaboration with the private sector. We try to leverage private-public partnerships to be able to achieve what we are doing. But we still also think about the gaps. The gaps that you are talking about are really across the board, about an uneven distribution of technological infrastructure across countries and region, and sometimes also uneven. You know, when you are talking about cross-border, we are not on the same page or on the same level of development that we can share data in a safe and appropriate manner. So limited research and development, including in Rwanda, is really still hampering this because we invest a small percentage in research and development, and especially insufficient funding for homegrown solutions. We have many young people now who are doing innovation thing. That ecosystem we have created, we also find young people who are creating something. How much money do we put in those kind of initiatives? That's one of the gaps we are still trying to fill as a country. So what I can suggest is investing heavily in digital infrastructure, prioritizing investment in internet access, electricity, ICT tools, especially in many underdeserved regions, but also in certain areas, like rural areas, where we need to expand this. We are digitalizing. People were talking about mobile money. Yesterday, we were talking about Rwanda and looking at the money, being able to do the e-commerce. You know, how can are we able to really secure and maximize and optimize in commerce without having e-commerce, because it's a cross-country and a cross-border type of thing. To harmonize the policy frameworks, especially work with regional bodies, African Union, AfCTA, and more importantly, the regional cooperation. You know, and I think someone mentioned the fact of not competing, instead building from what other people have done. there are stuff that Kenya has done that Rwanda hasn't. And there are many things Rwanda has done that Kenya hasn't done. So instead of it's to build on each other to be able to really optimize in our region, like East African community, or COMESA, or other people who can learn from each other to boost this kind of connectivity, but also share data and do many things. One last thing maybe I can do as an example, in East Africa, we have one passport. Now I don't carry Rwanda passport, it's East African passport. That's a major advancement and major progress in many different ways. But there's so much we can do in the area. So I can maybe leave it there and we can continue.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. And you mentioned so many things that I think will be shared by other panelists today. But specifically, you talk about the things that Rwanda can share with Kenya and that Kenya can share with Rwanda. Yeah. And the role of mobile money as a critical enabler of some of the transformation that we are pushing for through digital. And I think that's a good opportunity to bring in Angela from GSMA. I think the work that GSMA has done over the years has both focused on the role that critical services like digital payments can play and the role that mobile network operators play in this broader digital ecosystem. But you've also been a provider, in a sense, of really critical data repositories, right? So like the State of Mobile Internet Connectivity Report, I think this is something that I've turned to several times throughout the years. And so I want to hear your perspective based off of this long track record that GSMA has of building in this space and offering resources like this kind of data repository, to hear your perspective on opportunities and gaps.
Thank you very much, and for the opportunity to come to DC and share a lot of the information that we have as a GSMA. So I'm based in Nairobi. I head the GSMA Sub-Saharan Africa region, and this is what keeps me up at night. So, you've mentioned our strong competency in the value addition we add to the governments and their developmental agenda in Africa is about we as a GSMA, and our role in the region is to sort of bridge the conversations between understanding what the private sector through our members are investing in to stay ahead of the curve, because you have to build the railroads before the trains and the tracks get on it. And then at the same time, we have to really understand how to empower our governments with understanding with the limited resources that they have, where do we put the money on so we can see progress and moving the needle. And I think, we've always talked about the opportunity that we've had. I've been in the telecommunications sector for 24 years now. And since 2G, this has always been our leapfrogging opportunity in Africa. When you look at the State of Industry report, which is about mobile money and the financial services impact in the region contributes close to $1 trillion in moving money. And that's just the basic minimum viable product of persons to persons movement. We're not talking about the value chain over and above that. So you can imagine moving $1 trillion. Right, last year it was about 913 billion, and every year it adds $100 billion. And that's just the 2G use case because it's based on SMS and USSD. So if the majority of the population in Africa are able to navigate *234 *what to move money, can you imagine the opportunity? Now, if you look at a use case like Kenya, there is no gender gap when it comes to mobile money account ownership, close to just 1 to 2% gender gap. But on mobile internet adoption and how micro entrepreneurs use it, there's a 38% gender gap. So then you ask yourself a couple of questions. How is it possible there's no gender gap when it comes to moving money on 2G using a phone, but there's a gender gap when it comes to mobile internet adoption for micro entrepreneurs? So we start off by saying, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. And that's why we need, initiatives such as the AfTech and a lot of the stuff that we do in the GSA in terms of bringing that information to the surface so we can know where we're going. We've come to the end of the 10-year plan of the first tranche of the Africa We Want implementation plan. And looking at where we are, we have 2/3 of our population who remain offline. 710 million people who are close to a 3G, 4G signal have never used mobile internet. And that's the situation on the ground. So we have to look at how understanding how enabling policies, regulations can help drive digital adoption, because that is the thing. Because today, without getting the rest of the population, more than 2/3 using mobile internet, there is a question on the sustainability of the investments towards 5G and emerging technologies. We all understand the opportunities that AI, blockchain, IoT will give and help us with a leapfrogging opportunity, but that requires sustainable investments, and that largely comes from private capital. So how do we make sure that enabling policies are stimulating that investment and encouraging the investment in Africa? Because 5 years from now, we'll be talking about 6G. And I'm telling you that we're a continent that's largely using 2G. Only 30% of our population are using broadband technologies. So we start off by understanding that we need to close that gap. And the opportunity shows us that if we're not able to close this gap, it'll take us another 30 years to do so. We don't have that time. And what's sitting on the table is $700 billion if we don't close the usage gap by 2030. So the opportunity is there, but that we just need to get our people to go online. And so we look at how we can unlock that potential. That's my job and the team that I have in the GSMA. We look at how we can overcome the investment constraints so that the continent is facing, working together with our industry as a partner for developmental goals. We also look at how we can address the key barriers that have been mentioned so that we can have more adoption. What we did this year in collaboration also and complementing the AfTech was the GSMA Digital Africa Index, and it's online, and it's built on 4 indices. As you've mentioned, we do have a lot of reports, but we've tried to provide a couple of indices in one platform that allows us to see the opportunity. So number 1, it's not just about the enabling policies, but more about how they are driving and promoting the adoption. As I've said, we need to get 2/3 of our population online. And so we have the mobile money regulatory index, which tracks the enabling policies around mobile money regulatory. That's very well done. We have to look at anti-money laundering and funding terrorists, a lot of the regulations that exist around financial services, because it's based on mobile money. We look at mobile connectivity index, which is about the network infrastructure. But what we wanted to do with the Digital Africa Index was move beyond just measuring connectivity and counting connections to now really understanding what does it look like in terms of digitalization of consumers. As I've mentioned, it's just 1/3. Digitalization of businesses and digitalization of governments, as you've said. And the outcome of what we did, having the Digital Nation Society Index, which looks at those 3 pillars, consumers, governments, and businesses, and the Digital Policy and Regulatory Index that looks at also the enabling policies. And that's a lot of work, as you said, and I think we have a complementary initiative here, how we can get that information online, is what are those enabling policies that drive the adoption of digital businesses? Because the biggest opportunity in the continent, when you look at the tracker and the index, is that digital businesses is our biggest challenge in the region. Digital governments is doing well. Digital consumers has flatlined. We need to stimulate that growth, but it's because of the lack of digital businesses. As I've mentioned, micro entrepreneurs, small businesses, medium entrepreneurs, we need to stimulate them to go online. They do exist, they're doing business, but it's not online. And I think that's where the value addition will come in. So how can we therefore use that? And when we look at the gaps, therefore, we see that according to the tracker, there's a strong correlation between obviously the enabling policy environment and digitalization of businesses and governments. That's self-evident. And the GSMA Digital Africa Index actually shows that. We see 4 countries, that's Kenya, South Africa, Mauritius, and Seychelles, having high levels of scores in digital policies and regulatory index, but as well as the digitalization of their businesses. And then we have another 9 countries that are still just have their strong enabling policies, but are yet to drive digitalization. So it means that either there's a lag in terms of when the policies came into effect and the time it takes to get people to adopt those businesses, or they just sit there but they haven't been actually implemented because then there are challenges with resources towards empowering them to implement. And then there are other challenges like we know of the macroeconomic climate, political instability that sort of prevents digitalization from happening. And therefore a strong tech system is essential to driving those micro entrepreneurs, small, medium businesses to adapt. So I think what we need in Africa is how do we empower policymakers, regulators to understand and understand comparing countries by countries through indices so they can learn from one another. What has Rwanda done that we can learn from? What has Kenya done? What has South Africa done? Because maybe they have the policies, but you just need to understand what do we need to do in terms of addressing those barriers. And so learning from each other, I think, is an opportunity that we bring to the table to sort of bridge that gap in moving faster, further, before 30 years of closing the usage gap.
Yeah, really fascinating insights, Angela. And I hear so much potential for the enabling environment to not only not stifle innovation, but to drive innovation if it's done well, right? If the policies that are created are crafted in a way that that's the target, and how you can learn from countries who have put in place policies that have actually driven a stronger business climate. And I see a lot of focus on the role of the private sector here. Obviously, digital kind of has to involve the private sector for the growth element to be, self-sustaining in a lot of ways. And I want to get to the question of how different stakeholders play together in this space in just a moment. But first, I want to turn to Rob next and ask the same question on opportunities and gaps and how you see that across the whole tech policy landscape throughout Africa. Please.
Thanks very much, and huge thanks to the Carnegie Endowment and to Jane. I remember us sitting upstairs discussing the need for this kind of a tracker, so it's wonderful to see that it's come to fruition, and I think it'll be a huge asset to everyone. The African Center for Economic Transformation, where I work, we're a Pan-African policy institute, so we advise African governments on policy, as well as do kind of traditional think tank type things, so reports and conferences and so forth. I think on the opportunities, I mean, the big one is actually the opportunity for a single digital economy in Africa, right? I mean, that is not possible until you have these building blocks of these different policies in place, and we see now that there's at least a start on developing that infrastructure, if you will, so that a digital economy can exist. And as the ambassador knows, small countries in particular have to rely on that cross-border trade that can only come from a single digital economy. So I think that's the big opportunity. I see a couple of others more specific to this conversation that in some ways have already been touched upon. One is well-informed policy and flexible policy. I mean, I think there's particularly in areas where policy doesn't exist or hasn't existed, whether that's around blockchain or AI or digital currencies, digital public infrastructure. Everyone is building this from new. And so ensuring that policies are well informed, that they're contextualized, that they're not copied and pasted from other parts of the world, and that they're flexible, because I think this is the biggest challenge that policymakers will face in the digital world, is that things change so fast that if we don't come up with ways to craft policy legislation that can adapt without having to rewrite everything, then by the time you get the legislation passed, things have already changed. And this is very, very different from health or education or infrastructure or agriculture, where policies can remain in place for decades and still serve their purpose. So I think having that, there's an opportunity to think about policy in a different way, to make sure it's well informed by learning, but also to ensure that it's flexible and will adapt. And then I think also specific to the tracker, the opportunity for knowledge creation, using tools like the tracker, and there's other databases and data sets out there that help us and inform that, to do cross-country analysis, for example. understand what's working in some countries, what's not, to understand how to take a world-class policy from the global north and how should it be adapted to the global majority. What's the contextualization of that? So I think those are great opportunities that are on the horizon. Of course, there's the gaps, as you asked about. And I think one of those big gaps that we see interacting with governments is the lack of digital skills or digital knowledge within government, right? So, of course, your ministries of ICT or innovation, economic transformation, et cetera, there may be good skills there, but then you look across government and those same types of skills and understanding about the role of digital don't always exist. And we don't see the right opportunities to create that kind of capacity within government, and particularly, and it's another gap, is the digital champions. We have Rwanda and we had Kenya, so we have two of the biggest digital champions on the continent, and certainly there's others, some were mentioned, Tunisia, Morocco, et cetera as well. But in many countries, while there might be references to the importance of digital, and of course it shows up in speeches and so on, actually championing and making the tough choices to ensure that a digital economy and a transparent, a productive digital economy emerges is not always the case. And how do we bridge that gap of creating those champions? And we know within government that's always very difficult. Governments change, ministers change, cabinet secretaries change. So how do you build that capacity that also transcends political change? And I think the last kind of gap or challenge that I'll note is, and then it kind of relates to my last point, is around comprehensive policy. So there's 500 and some policy documents out there, but 550 policy documents out there. But we know that often those policies are created in a bit of a vacuum, right? Or as the digital economy develops, you need a data policy, so you do a data policy, and then you need a interoperability policy, so you do that, but they don't necessarily link together. So how to step back and help governments think comprehensively about that policy, and again, from the perspective of it also needs to evolve and change over time.
Yeah. Really great points, and I think a lot of the opportunities and gaps that you're mentioning are opportunities for the tracker to inform, right? And also they're universal problems, right? The lack of digital skills in government. I think this is such a rapidly evolving field that every government worldwide is struggling with these types of issues. Jane, I want to turn to you as the last kind of person on this road to weigh in on the opportunities and gaps questions quickly, but what are some of the insights that you've gained as you've worked to put together this tracker and you've gotten into the weeds, so to speak, on the different, the range of policies that are out there and the policy landscape? What are your thoughts on this question?
Sure. Thank you, Aubrey, for that question. I think the advantage of speaking after such three great speakers is to say everything they say plus. But there are a couple of things I want to really just touch on, especially that Rob has just mentioned, is you talked about a comprehensive national policies. I want to really emphasize on that because we are now moving to an African continent where we talk about a single digital economy, whereby we are calling for businesses to move their goods across the continent, like Angela spoke about, but yet we are still inhibited by national policies and laws that are not harmonized. So I really wanted just to double touch on that to say that I think there's a lot of opportunity when this research surfaces some of these things, is to show that the content in this document sometimes, the content in Kenya, for example, in a border like with Ethiopia, there's still barriers within the laws and regulations. And I mean, these are people who are literally divided by invisible boundaries and have to trade across boundaries. But sending money across boundaries becomes very tough. If you're in Ghana, you're in Nigeria, you're having to use very different laws and policies and regulation when it comes to moving money. We're beginning to see in some of these new areas like satellite connectivity. We're seeing a huge challenge when it comes to trying to deploy these services in African countries. They're having to use different national policy regimes, yet you're all deriving from the same source. So harmonization, I think, across the continent, and I think this is a call, we're told it's a call for action. So I'm hoping that as we move forward with this research, that bodies like the Africa Union, the Africa Telecommunications are partners, and I know they're already doing great work around this, is how do we start ensuring that what the policies, the guardrails that we've put in place, the visions we've put in place are speaking to the common goal ascribed as within the African Union. And I think the second thing that I would call again a call for action is when we were doing this research, it's very interesting to note that even as researchers, when we would go to some of these websites looking for the information, now you have the repository, again, plug for AfTech, but if, and we still want to build this out to 55 countries, is having website, as we talk about digital government, websites that have these repositories there that work, that links are actually live. So when you click on our website, you can actually go to the government of, I'll go with Kenya because I'm from Kenya, I don't want to use an ad, is you click and you can find the links to these documents, or you can find the link to these repositories. So I think for call for digital government, ensuring that the visibility of these documents link, because I'm imagining most of the people who go to these are also business people who want to deal with this, understand the ecosystem, so the visibility is really important. But I think I will just emphasize on those because I've spoken earlier, and to say that there's a lot of opportunity, and I think the good thing about this kind of research is partnership and collaboration is open for all, and for people to take those touch points on how this best can apply to them.
That's wonderful, Jane. I think I want to, because we're about to shift to Q&A, so we'll have an opportunity to hear from the audience, any questions or thoughts you all have. I want to quickly build on this notion of harmonization and the difficulty there, but also the opportunity, because one of the reasons that I think digital technology is so critical throughout the continent is the potential for driving e-commerce, the potential for reaching some of these goals at scale. Beyond that kind of economic factor, there's also the question of passports and this kind of regional harmonization of different efforts. When you can digitize, shared goals, it can make a tremendous difference, right? And so how do you all, I want to bring that kind of framing to you, perhaps, Ambassador, of how do you see this, the path toward better harmonization of strategies, policies, legislations throughout very diverse countries, right? But with the goal of harmonization and sharing goals around the way that digital transformation impacts citizens throughout the continent.
So this can answer the whole question. Really, it all comes down to political will. If we are talking about governments, for us to be able to even start working with other people, we had to really make our visa process very easy. Like now, any African can go to Rwanda with no visa. That was a position taken by our government to ease the movement of people and other things as well. You can't work together if you are limited, even in your movement. So it has to be, you mentioned it, a very comprehensive thing. It's not just one thing. Collaboration comes by looking and saying, what can we do together to advance both our countries, our people, our governments. We are a big champion of African continental free trade. When my president was the head of African Union, he really championed it. We did the reforms. We pushed for those things. But all these things, also bring what we are talking about, including, so the push, I remember when we were signing East African visa, saying, okay, we are going to travel to Rwanda, you are going to Kenya, you are going to Tanzania and Uganda. I mean, why are people going to each embassy to get a visa if you are going to the same region? That's how we came up with East African visa for tourism. So all these things have to come with a collaboration. It's an extension of collaboration. So this is no different from that kind of political will and really to put action in, to implement what we are talking about. Because otherwise we'll end up always having good practices in the books, but there's nothing when it comes to implementation.
So how do you get political will? That's the question that's...
So this is something that, it's it's really a vision we have for Africa. It's to set that vision. It's to love your country more than yourself. It's when you are driving a common interest instead of thinking about my own interests. So those are things that I cannot teach about that, but it's something that is developed through the doing.
I see Rob raising a finger. You can teach us about how you develop political will.
Well, I mean, the reality is that when we talk about something like collaboration across borders, a digital single economy, this is a regional public good, if you will.
Yeah.
And it's not all benefits. So each of those embassies that now have one common passport, someone's not collecting the fee at each embassy now, so that's a cost. Same thing for, AfCFTA. We've seen many of the big economies in Africa not be as keen because they don't need to be, right? There would be a cost to them, essentially. So to create that political will, I think it comes back to knowledge and understanding. And having good stories that a Minister of Finance or a Minister of ICT understands the benefit, the mutual benefit, but also the benefit to his or her country. And that's the kind of knowledge and storylines that can be created by something from the tracker. And if you put that in the hands of ministers, then I think we're in a much better position to create that political will.
Yeah, and I want to ask one last question before we shift to Q&A from the audience, but we're focusing a lot on the role of governments in policy, and I think obviously that's a natural stakeholder to focus on. But as many of you have mentioned, there are several other stakeholders that are key, especially when it comes to policy implementation, policy uptake, and how policy translates to the broader enabling environment, the broader ecosystem in which multiple actors need to engage. And so we may not have time for everybody to weigh in on this, but maybe Angela, I can start with you, and if we have time, we can go through. What do you see the role for different stakeholders? GSMA, you've mentioned the strong role of the private sector in shaping the way that digital technologies deliver. How do you see different stakeholders fitting into this kind of puzzle in the technology landscape, policy landscape in Africa?
So I think, like I said, we all have to play a role, it takes a village to solve this problem in Africa. And so creating tools that allow that visualization of the opportunity where they can see how they can plug in terms of whether it's government or private sector, DFIs, whoever, to understand where the opportunities are and really expose what it takes to become a digital nation, because everybody does have that in their blueprint as a nation, and there's a lot of investment being put in, but it's almost very blind investment that you're hoping for the best. You're just throwing money at a problem. And so tools that allow you to visualize the sort of the effect that you will have. Do we put money in digital skills? Do we put the money in empowering digital health, digital education, because then, with all these services, do we put money towards, increasing productivity in government and reducing leakages so there's less, borrowing of money as opposed to trying to develop the money locally? How do we solve those really systemic problems? And I think that's what we have to play as our role, to exposing that opportunity in a way that allows everybody to co-create, because this will definitely take everybody to partner with the industry that just playing the enablement role. And the enablement role will help everybody else in that leapfrogging opportunity. It'll also provide opportunities to sort of de-risk Africa, because there's a high cost of premium in Africa, investments in Africa, simply because of a lack of information. So again, this is another role that we can play in how do we all collaborate to provide that sort of complementary information in a one-stop shop, a free tool that's interactive, that's available in all languages, and that's all possible today with emerging tech. And then that helps decision makers, private sector, public sector, play that role in helping to de-risk Africa and bring that cost premium in our services, and therefore the affordability of going online.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's shift. We're running short on time. Let's shift to open the floor to questions from the audience. I'd invite anyone with a question, please raise your hand. We'll bring a microphone around, and I'd also like to invite those of you joining us online Please feel free to put your question in the chat, and we'll get to them through an interpreter from the room. Please, let's start right here in the front row.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much to our panelists and to Dr. Jane Munga for this event and for launching this incredible tool. I have so many questions. I'm going to try and wrap them up into one. My name is Nomsan Dongwe. I'm a research fellow at the James Martin Center for Nonproliferation Studies. So I focus on things more from a security angle, and I'm going to work that into my question on the geopolitics of it all. So before I get to the geopolitics of it all, the first question I had was who is the main source of money for digital in Africa? Is it African private sector, or is it venture capital coming from Silicon Valley? What's the story there? Because I think that would have an impact on the sustainability front that you mentioned earlier about sustainable funding and knowing how Silicon Valley likes to move fast and break things. It's obviously, in my view, something that you cannot just rely on venture capital coming from external funders. So I'm curious to see if that factors into the equation. And then good case studies, like the United States or the European Union, are also massive amounts of land where there has to be some sort of harmonization. Are there lessons that can be learned from there? And I do not assume that they have it all figured out, but I'm interested if that's something that you've looked at. And then finally, what do the security folks in all of these African jurisdictions say when the tech and the digitalization is moving forward and there's an innovation element and securing that tech and securing that technology and that intellectual property? So I think I asked 3 questions.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We'll put a cap on it for other questions. So let's quickly go through and collect maybe 2 more, and then we can turn to the panelists. So decide which questions you want to go for. Right back here, I see the last row.
Good morning. I'm Iria Puyosa. I'm a research fellow on the Democracy for State Initiative at the Atlantic Council. I want to start for thanks, Jane, for this wonderful resources. It's going to be very helpful for everybody working on that policy in Africa. What I have seen today and the conversation, all this effort is focused on digital economy, in fostering digital economy in Africa. I kind of missing an aspect on this conversation. I don't see in the framework how digital transformation may also help to strengthen democracy in Africa, and how is a need for human rights safeguards in policies and in tech policy. I'm particularly concerned about issues of data protection and human rights safeguard in the deployment of digital identification, which is central, is core to digital public infrastructure and digital payment. We have been part of the conversation. I understand the side of the digital inclusion, but I think we are missing the side of the potential for human rights risk, surveillance, data breaches, and I would like to get your comments on how that can be incorporated to the policies in order to have that digital transformation who doesn't mix the side of democracy and freedoms. Thanks.
So I feel like I'm choosing questions that are going to require us to have another 3-hour session very quickly. But let's go to one last question over here. I thought I saw.
There's the mic.
Oh, please. Oh, yes, you have a mic. Great.
Thank you. Luca Ricci from the International Monetary Fund. Thanks a lot for the invitation. I'm mission chief in the African department, but also had the digital payment unit in the African department covering digital payments. So my question, as you can imagine, from my institution is closer to the cross-border interoperability of payment systems. And there's been a lot of discussion from the panelists, which has been excellent. And the panelists highlighted the complications of the political economy and the political wheels and so on. What I wonder is, do you think it's going to be easier to achieve cross-border interoperability by putting everybody in the room and trying to convince them with good examples or other things like that? Or it's easier to have a slow organic movement where a couple of countries get together and propose something that works for them, and then it expands further? Like, for example, we have PAPS that created an initiative, SADC RTGS, Eastern Africa is creating other initiatives and so on. Which is the best approach, everybody in one room or slowly growing? Or you think it's even better if the private sector does it on its own, like M-Pesa, like you mentioned, and many others get together and start creating some ways of doing it. And as some companies from Silicon Valley that was mentioned before are already creating opportunities to ship money in and out of Africa and so on. So more from the government side, more from the private sector side, and if it's from the government side, more from an organically slow growth, or just everybody in the room, let's do it quickly because it's important. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you for the questions. I think let's go ahead and move to the panelists. I'm not sure how we're going to cover this in the next 5 minutes, but let's try our best. Whoever wants to start first with whichever question resonates the most with you.
Right. I'll handle the investment bit. So in Africa, particularly telecommunications sector, because it's very capital intensive, the funding is private capital. Building the infrastructure is not cheap. Taxation is our biggest challenge in the region. And simply because we haven't digitalized other sectors enough for governments to be very efficient in how they collect their taxes. And so the sector, because of its success, presents itself as the best opportunity to, try and mobilize resources for the government. And so when you look at disruption, fantastic. Disruption is good. Brings in ideas, the funnel is full of ideas. But I think the challenge in Africa will always be scale. And so you'll always find a trend that there are lots of people who are trying new things in Africa, which is great. But without understanding the dynamics of investments and understanding how investments can scale, some of these disruptions are really huge disruptions because they continue to perpetuate the problem of making things affordable because you sort of destroy value in the short term. The way private capital works in the telecommunications sector, it has to be inclusive. So there is investments from government in terms of political goodwill and how they partner with governments. And you'll find that very successful operations leverage that sort of partnership, and it's quite healthy. We have to promote healthy competition. And because Africa is really fragmented, 54 countries, each country having at least 3-4 operators, I mean, those are the things we have to grapple with in terms of, again, eroding value. Because it might work in a continent where you have 1.4 billion people or so with only 3-4 operators, but not in a country, in a continent of 55 countries with 3-4. So again, we begin to erode value. We see that, of course, now with LEO satellites and satellites coming in. The use case globally should be about partnerships and closing the rural divide, because that's where the problem is in terms of the majority of our population are not online. There is probably the coverage is patchy or it's unaffordable. But we see that the use case for the disruption is actually in the areas where it was not needed. It's in urban areas where those sort of technologies are being deployed. And at the end of the day, it'll be a race to the bottom. And that will not help anybody because that means we're scaring away private sector capital. It's better for them to invest in mining because that's where the money is coming from for these capital-intensive projects than telecommunications sector. And that's why we see we're lagging behind now with the digital divide. 2G, we stuck there. 3G, we tried. 4G, there is no return of investment. 5G, hardly scratching the surface, about 1% on average across the continent. 6G, 5 years away. So I think we have to work together. That geopolitical angle, we have to see Africa as 55 nations. It's not going to be easy to put all of us in a room to agree. That's never going to happen. And I think pockets of success, East Africa, South African region, West African region is better because it brings the different diversity and challenges around harmonizing our policies and regulations towards the goal and the aspiration, which is very clear and understood on the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. It'll take us a little bit to get there, but we need to work with what's working in the different regions.
Yeah, and nicely done. I think you addressed two questions with your answer. So Ambassador, do you have any thoughts on any of the questions, or would you like to?
No, I think she's addressed it well, but I was kind of fascinated with the democracy thing. And for me, I believe that kind of digitalization, actually, what we are trying to do is the access by the majority of the people is already, you are thinking in terms of democratic model of how we can do it. When I think about even the changes when our people became connected to the internet, and how much they are able to participate in the life of the country, I can see this is actually opening the door for that. So I believe it's something that we'll have a discussion, a more extended discussion on, but I believe you can't ignore that aspect of democratization in the human rights. Yeah.
Thank you. I apologize that we can't do any more questions right now, but I would encourage everyone to stay afterward and please connect with the panelists because I can tell that there are a number of really solid questions in this audience. Maybe we can hand it over to you, Jane, after we thank the panelists now that we are at time. But thank you all so much. Please join me in thanking the panelists and we'll move on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think for me is to quickly first say thank you. And I don't know if Secretary General Omo is still online. I would want to also acknowledge his presence. I don't know if we can bring him on for... all right, Zach, if we just want to get your last minute and way forward from you as we close. Would you like to go down?
Thank you very much, Jane. I really want to start by appreciating the keynote speakers that came before the panelists, the audience that is before us, and everyone that has been involved in this work. I think the opportunity for us to continuously update the tracker and work in terms of facilitating information to the public is tremendous. It's to our benefit. We've started a journey, and I see a lot of questions coming through in terms of possibilities that the tracker can have. Issues like ICT and democratization, human rights, and data protection, protecting individual information. These are areas that could easily be built on the tracker or any other tool, and we'll be willing to work with the partners or benefactors or people or organizations that are interested in such work for purposes of just having a democratization with human rights angle to the process of digital transformation that we have in Africa. The value of the tracker cannot be gainsaid, and so I think the opportunity to have it informed, to have it to make it comprehensive, to have it to make it flexible is all been said, and we will work with Carnegie Africa program to ensure that it's continuously updated together with the membership. Of course, this is the beginning of the journey. There is a lot more that we think we can do with this particular tracker. Certainly, I want to thank the membership again that have come through with information, and to appeal to those of us who are not with the countries that are yet to facilitate or provide information to do so. It's for our good, and we think that this tool is opportune and available for us to just showcase the extent to which our various countries are living up to the dream that has been set by the African Union. So this is what I wanted to say. Certainly apologies from me, especially for our audience from the African continent in terms of confusion about time. We had started planning for this quite early before the folks in the US tampered with the time. And so we fell behind by an hour because of the time changes, the winter time in the US. So most of you were logging in an hour before the scheduled time. Sincere apologies over that. But from me and the African Union, just to pledge availability to work with the Carnegie Africa program and indeed the partners that are willing to work with us in this. either in the realm of investments in ICT in Africa, the geopolitics that are involved in that, the issue of cross-border interoperability of mobile payment systems. The GSMA has been active in that area. We will be available to work in these areas for the good of the continent. Of course, using this tracker as the bedrock, as the bedrock for all that we do. So thank you very much from me and the team at the African Telecommunications Union. Over to you, Jen.
I was just going to stand here. Okay, so to close this out here at DC, and to John Omo, thank you very much. Don't worry, we still get confused with the falling back, and at least I do. So it happens, and I'm really apologize for that. I really want to call this to close because I know we're on time, but I don't want to do that without first thanking those who have been very, very instrumental in helping get this tracker live. At the very back, we have JK. Shout out to her. I learned a little bit about coding. I know how to collect the data, but honestly, coding is not my thing. So I really appreciate the team of the communications team. I appreciate Kofi, Alex, everybody who is here. And of course, to you, esteemed guests who are here. This could not have been made possible without you. I see so many familiar faces. Please hang out, get something to drink, and let's continue interacting. Thank you very much, and God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Bye from Nairobi.